Hi, my name is Paula and I'm a new mom. Thank you so much for joining us on our podcast on sleep survival. Today I am joined by Pamela Mittleman and Jamie Cassoff from the Kids Sleep Clinic to give us tools and strategies on the certain challenges that we face during newborn sleep. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us today. So let's get right into it. On the Sleep Survival podcast, we talk about specifically newborn sleep. And Catherine, Dom, and Bianca, and also myself, we shared our stories on how difficult and stressful and anxiety-inducing newborn sleep really was for us. We each told our story and had similarities, but also had difficulties and differences. So let's jump right into it. Let's begin with Catherine. So Catherine was someone who really liked to follow the guidelines, really took sleep training into her home. And she explains to us how with her first child, sleep was a little bit easier during those first few months, but how her second child, Sienna, really took them by storm, were the words that she used. She is a stickler for doing things by the book and she really wanted to practice safe sleep in the bassinet. So let's talk about Catherine. So what I think, to summarize and to kind of pinpoint what was really maddening for her, was every time Sienna would cry, every time she would wake up after maybe one sleep cycle, I don't know, you'll tell me, she would pick her up, put her back down, and then again, she would cry again. So I don't know, Pamela or Jamie, if you can tell me maybe, first of all, what's going on in the newborn months? Like why are children so, they can't sleep on their own in this beautiful bed that we've accommodated for them?
I think that before we jump into exactly what's going on in the newborn phase, and I'm certainly gonna defer to Jamie on that, I think it's also what's interesting is that here you have Catherine, who is following the sort of rules of the book, so to speak. And with each kid, the result is different. So I think that that's really important to highlight, because it's not necessarily about Catherine and the way she's implementing or necessarily about the rules of the book, but the other variable is the child and the unique differences that each child brings. So I think that's something that's really, really important to acknowledge. And I think that also could have moms feeling a little bit better and saying, okay, wait a minute, it's not necessarily something that I'm doing wrong, or it's not that the strategy is wrong, but maybe this particular kid has a different need, even though, the book says that all 0 to 4 month olds, follow X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
So I kind of just wanted to preface it by saying that.
I agree. I think I would take it a step further and say there is no book from
No
0
book.
to 4 months.
No book. Throw the book out.
And then 4 months plus, there's many books.
Wow.
Right? There's really nothing to do at the beginning. You're meeting your child, you're, seeing them for the first time, hearing them for the first time, learning how to feed, healing. There's really nothing that you can do those first few weeks. I would even say first few months. There's really nothing that there's a bit of a foundation you can start to work on, maybe 8 weeks, 12 weeks.
Okay.
But there's no book.
And that's really interesting that you say that, because Catherine had mentioned that for her first, the rule book or whatever, the safe sleep worked. And for Sienna, her second, it didn't work at all. So it just proves that every child is different and has different needs. And it's not, a one size fits all.
Yeah, there's the child's need, there's the caregiver's need, and then there's the family system need.
Yes.
Right? And the book doesn't necessarily account for the first child. Right? And even if it does, it doesn't necessarily account for the dynamic that goes on in the family, or how mom's feeling, or any of that. But to Jamie's point, that really just sort of get to know your child, and there's really not much to do. I feel like on one hand, that's comforting, but on the other hand, it's okay, so how do I survive it?
Exactly.
Right? Because we're so sleep deprived. So are we supposed to just stay in this all consuming
Circle
sleep
of hell.
Right. Circle of hell.
For sure. And I think that's our job is, and what we really pride ourselves on is helping families know what to focus on depending on the age. Like, where should you invest your energy?
Exactly.
We only have a limited amount.
Right.
Yeah.
You ask any,
Yeah.
new mom, by the end of the day or even by noon, we're like done, right?
Yeah.
So what should we work on that actually will improve sleep? Maybe not now, maybe a few months from now, but where should we exert our energy? A lot of people focus on the wrong things, unfortunately, and then it doesn't help and you're even more exhausted. And so that's kind of where we come in. Maybe there's not much you can work on the first few months, but there are a few things that down the road will become more important. And so that's really our job.
And, contrarily to Catherine, you have myself, Dom, and Bianca, who were like, I'm just going to bring the baby in my bed and I need to get a little bit of shut eye. As even if I'm not in a deep sleep, I need to get it. So I'm going to put them in my bed. So you have this kind of battle between, co-sleeping and following the rule book and not co-sleeping. And I know firsthand that Catherine had a really tough time. Like it caused physical and mental despair for her and her family because she was such a stickler to doing it right. Whereas myself, Dom, and Bianca were a little bit more lenient, I guess, and we brought our children into our bed. My kids slept with me until they were 6 months old, until I decided to sleep train. So let's talk a little bit about, the differences. Like, I don't want to ask, is it okay to co-sleep? But, I know that there's certain rules and, regulations, but at the same time, there's also the mother's sanity.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not just the three of you. I mean, many of our clients come to us and have been co-sleeping because it's really hard to do what the recommendation is, right? Which is, so at least the Canadian guidelines are that the baby is sleeping in your room in a device and other than your bed. So usually it's like a bassinet or pack and play or crib.
Okay.
But it's easier said than done, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you're responding all night, nursing or bottle feeding, and they're up every, hour or less. And then eventually you get really, really, really tired. And rather than like putting them back in the bassinet or the crib or the pack and play, they just end up, sleeping with you.
Exactly.
But the rules or the book says that that's not allowed.
It's not okay.
So, and I don't know really if there is an answer.
You do whatever works for you.
You do whatever works for you. I mean, you want to be mindful that you're offering a safe environment for your child. So whether that is like the bassinet or whether it's, a separate room where they're in a crib, bassinet, or pack and play, and you're able to hear them and see them and, not put blankets or pillows, which you do have in your bed. Sometimes that actually could be potentially the safer place.
Yeah.
And so I think this is something we've always wanted to talk about on a podcast.
Yeah.
It's so glad.
And here we are.
True. I think that like there definitely is no right answer. If you're looking, it really depends what the question is. Where is the safest place for my child to sleep? Right? That certainly has clear-cut answers that are, can be found, by the Canadian health guidelines, but also taking into consideration your specific situation. Like Jamie just said, like maybe in a certain circumstance, it is safer to amend the guidelines somewhat. So, that's the answer to, is like, what's the safest place for my child to sleep when it comes to co-sleeping. But then the other question is, what do I want? What's my personal goal? Is my personal goal sleep at all costs? Is my personal goal teaching independence? Like getting the child to sleep through the night in the quickest way possible? So, so the answer is going to depend also on what the question is.
That's a great point. What is your goal? If the goal is that your child is sleeping independently by, 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, I would plan differently than if your goal is to co-sleep. Actually, there's research on that. So if your intention was to co-sleep from the beginning, then co-sleeping usually goes quite well, and is not traumatizing to the family. You plan ahead, you have your strategy, you work with your partner to figure out where everyone's going to be sleeping in the home, things like that. But if it's like a responsive co-sleeping because, you're trying to do, we talked about the transfer or whatever it is, and it's not working, then often it doesn't always help. It's not helpful to the family, or it doesn't go well, let's say.
Can I ask you? Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, here's where you get like the benefit of the researcher and the clinician in Jamie and I, because that's what the research shows. And, the clinical explanation for that is that it doesn't create dissonance. There's no cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is basically difference between your actions and your thinking, right? So there's no difference here, because if you go into a situation with the intention to co-sleep, then you're not having this mental struggle that Catherine's having, right? So you're not having this anxiety about, am I doing this wrong?
Yes.
The whole family unit is on the same page. It's all in place. Mom's mental health is in check, at least for that particular issue, So it from a clinical perspective and like an overall family wellness perspective, it makes sense to me that the research supports that.
You're not walking by the nursery that you've set up that you're not using.
Yeah.
We often have families that are like, we have this all set up, but they'll only sleep with us. If that was your intent in the first place, then it usually goes quite well. But I would say that in your guys' case, it was not, correct?
It was not. And I think Bianca actually was one of the only ones out of the four of us that were there that I don't think her plan was to co-sleep, but when you were saying that they had a plan, they did have a plan. So her husband slept in the guest room. She slept with her firstborn in the bed. She had the whole bed to herself. I think what her goal was putting her sleep and her mental health first, and organizing the house that way. I don't know many parents, and I'm sure you've met many parents, that co-sleeping was a goal, was the plan from the get-go, is what I'm trying to say.
Right. So the majority is reactive.
It's reactive.
And therefore it becomes maybe like a negative situation for the family. Now, I think that what I love about our job is that there's some things that we could put in place early on, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, where you're set up in such a way to promote sleep long term. When I say long term, I mean like 8 months, 9 months, 10 months. Yeah. And it kind of avoids a lot of the anxiety that's created by like the long term co-sleeping.
So let's talk about those ingredients.
Let's get to the point.
Because I'm sure everyone's dying to know, yes, newborn months is sleep survival, but what can I do to make it a little bit easier for moms, but also for the baby, so the baby can sleep. I remember at one point, Catherine said, we instilled, this was once Sienna got sleep trained, so that's a whole different chapter. But she remembers waking up to Sienna and saying, "Hello, baby." Like, she was baseline cranky for the first few months of her life. She was saying, and you tell me if that's due to her sleep. Catherine, thinks it's due because she didn't set her up for success in sleep. So she never really met her child until she sleep trained her, and she was all of a sudden laughing and, happy. And so I will let you tell us what those ingredients are and if that actually you think correlated to her behavior.
Yeah. Let's get to that. One more thing before.
Tell me. Yes, please. I love it.
There's lots of talk about sleep training,
yes.
and I think it's really a concept that's misunderstood.
Yes.
But what I will say is that, giving your child the gift of a good night's sleep really does lead to mood improvements. And there's been lots of research on this because it's a bit of a controversial topic. And what is being found is that if you give your child the gift of a good night's sleep, whether it's, there's a variety of ways, they are better off in the short term and long term, which is maybe, what we were seeing with Sienna.
Yeah.
So And we don't really know why, right? Is it like, consolidated sleep? They're getting all the benefits of all the sleeps, of all the stages of sleep, but also mom is getting, and dad they're getting more sleep. And so, maybe without realizing, they take more time to, just spend one-on-one time with their child, communicating with them, reading with them, playing with them, which in turn leads their child to be in a better mood as well. So there's like the direct sleep causes better mood. And then there's the indirect, sleep helps parents who are then helping their child be in a better mood.
Yeah.
And I think there's a variety of reasons
and
why.
it's all linked,
could have
clearly.
Yeah, of course.
And as the infant grows into a toddler, a preschooler, a school age, a teenager, the benefits of sleep are not just mood, behavior, cognitive abilities, emotional regulation, right? So it's not like in an infant, you just see it as like, oh, they're so happy. They woke up happy and they're smiling.
Yeah.
Right. But like, as like their world becomes more complex, you see that direct impact or direct negative impact of sleep deprivation.
Yeah, for sure. And that's
Very
why we
much
see
so.
parents become more motivated to teach their child how to sleep as they get older, because suddenly, learning how to speak is relevant, and learning how to walk is relevant. And, you really see it. And like you said, it can happen like that, right? A few good nights sleep, you can have a word explosion, mood improvement.
Yeah.
And so it really helps the entire, the child, but also the system around them.
Yeah, there's the survival in the day-to-day as infants, but there's also, as Jamie's saying, like the gift for the future. We see a lot of teenagers who don't sleep, who have never slept, so
because they never were taught how from the beginning.
Yeah,
we see that a lot. Yeah. Okay, so let's get back to the ingredients
of newborn sleep.
Yeah. So how
What
young
can you
can you start? So I think the first few weeks there's really nothing to do. Really, literally survival mode.
Heal and survive.
They're living in a different ecosystem. Like they're getting to know the world that's not a part of you. So I guess it's you can't, just like Catherine said, you can't really spoil a newborn, right?
No.
I would say give yourself permission to not do anything.
Yeah,
I almost think that that's like an important part of that newborn stage.
I think safety is important, right?
Okay.
So for toddlers, like that part of, trying to set up something that works for your family, being mindful that it is safe for your child. And then I think once they start smiling socially, making connections with the world, somewhere between 8 and 12 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. So what do you do between 8 and 12 weeks?
So the first thing you do is you set up the environment. So you ensure you need to know what a sleep compatible environment is: dark, quiet, free of noise, cool temperature. That's so in addition to the safety, there's the optimal sleep environment, right?
Yeah, and I think like this is where Luna.
Yeah.
So
what is Luna?
Yeah, so Luna is basically us working together for many years, seeing that there's many commonalities with our clients, and finding what are the active ingredients to help a child sleep, to teach a child how to sleep. And it comes down to 4 ingredients. This is based on research, clinical stuff, and really us just coming together and saying, can't we just tell people that this is what we've been, these are the most important things, right? Yeah. So I guess like giving away the secrets to a good night's sleep for your child.
So Luna's our online platform. You could find us on Instagram right now.
Luna Sleep System.
Luna Sleep System. And it's basically Jamie and I boiling down all of our work into 4 ingredients. So we're calling them our 4 active ingredients. So the order in which you use the ingredients is important. Okay. So a newborn is going to be at the first ingredient, and the first So
and then it's cumulative.
It's somewhat. Okay. So if we were starting to sleep train, as you said, an 8-month-old, let's say, and this is why we don't like the word sleep training. We would say, okay, what do we need to have in place? First, you need to have a optimal sleep environment. optimal slash safe.
Active ingredient A.
Active ingredient B would be a bedtime routine.
Okay.
So we'll talk about that here in regards to infants. Also, active ingredient C would be their schedule, their sleep schedule. Are they sleeping in a timely manner that coincides with their sleep needs? And active ingredient D would be independent sleep. And that is sort of like what people are referring to as sleep training.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when people talk about sleep training, there's sometimes the misconception is they could miss the boat on, wait a minute, have they laid the foundation with the other ingredients?
That happens all the time, right? They jump to the sleep training part. You hear about cry it out, you hear about all these methods, but they don't do the other three ingredients. And so I think what's relevant in the newborn phase, 0 to 4 months, are the first two ingredients. Environment and routine. And I would say up to 4 months, that's really all you can work on.
Okay.
But you would only want to start at 8 to 12 weeks when they're smiling socially.
Okay.
So you want to have a good environment and a good routine.
Okay.
And what I love about this is it really is setting the foundation for good sleep habits after 4 months. And they're relatively, we can discuss it, but families really like working on them, especially the routine part, because in a time where you feel like you have very little control in your life with a baby, it's something that will happen every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's something that you and you can work on as a family, and it takes some practice, but your baby starts to understand very quickly what's happening. And it's something that you do every day. And it's like, no matter how bad the day goes or what's out of your control, this is in your control. Yeah. And it's a bedtime routine.
And at that age, it's often pleasant.
Mm-hmm.
It's often pleasant. Toddlers, that's a different story.
Yeah.
Oftentimes that's not so pleasant.
Yeah.
but at this stage, the bedtime routine, it's so nice. You can involve the family, as Jamie has shown on Luna with Rafa.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's nice. I mean, I started really young, around 8 weeks with my
Rafa.
son. And it only took like a week or so, and you can see a difference. You saw a difference in him. Like, he knew what was coming. There are cues to his body that sleep is coming. And so
totally,
you start with, you want an environment. So if we're going to really start, active ingredient A is a good environment. So
take us, for example, because I followed Luna and I followed your journey with Rafa, which I find very cool that you took your son and kind of, is explaining to the world how to.
Amazing.
It's great. And I like how you also involved your two older girls as a family, like you said. So let's talk about, for example, active ingredient A. So would be the environment. So take me through the steps. It's dark. You have your blackout blinds.
Yeah, you have blackout blinds. I mean, you don't need to be crazy. You want it to be dark. So, if you and I can sleep in that room, then it's dark enough, then it's probably dark enough for your baby.
Okay.
Cool. So temperature,
So what,
you
like
really
20
want,
degrees?
18 to 20.
Okay.
That's usually a pretty big shock to parents. So it's quite cool.
Cool.
It's cool.
Because they have a sleep sack, they have a pajama that's maybe long sleeves. Like, you don't, okay.
Yeah,
Perfect.
but you always think, I feel like, babies need to be bundled and layered, and it's really not. It's really not true. A light cotton pajama, a light cotton sleep sack or swaddle, and 18 to 20 degrees.
Okay.
What else? White noise machines. That's only on for sleep. So you would turn it on when they would go to sleep.
Yeah.
Cool,
quiet, dark.
What else?
What are we saying?
Their environment. So at the sleep sack part, the security, so pacifiers.
Yes. That's another also very debated topic.
I think
that's a different topic. But pacifier
especially 0 to 4 months.
Yeah.
I don't think
we could. I mean, listen. Pacifiers are actually recommended to prevent SIDS.
Yeah.
So they are. One would argue that it makes it safer. To them for your child to sleep with a pacifier.
Okay. So pacifier, or the alternative is like a lovey, like a breathable lovey.
Or both, but breathable lovey, you would need to get approval from your pediatrician.
Okay.
If they're younger than 1 year old.
Okay.
So a breathable, like a muslin material security object. So I think when we talk about environment, we also want to talk about what's not in the
Yes.
environment. So like no toys, no stimulating objects like mobiles.
Yes. A lot
you
of people don't know that.
No, you don't want to play in the same room where your child is sleeping.
Okay.
So, sometimes what parents do is kind of plop their baby into their crib while they're doing something else in their room. We don't want to do that.
Okay.
They should only be there if they're sleeping. And
Perfect.
I think also the same environment
Mhm.
every night is important. So it doesn't necessarily have to be 0 to 4 months. It doesn't have to be the same environment for every sleep period. But if we want a rhythm, you want the same environment for each sleep period. So for example, the night has its own environment. If we can get, daytime sleep in that environment, if we're at that stage in terms of their sleep, then great. If not, then you can have different sort of areas in the home. But I do think that for nighttime sleep, to start every night in the same place should be the goal. And sometimes that's like, sometimes we take that for granted because a lot of families don't necessarily do that. Like we hear a lot about like families playing musical beds and tonight dad went to go to sleep here and
Our baby started sleeping in like the living room and then moved up to the bedroom after and then ended up somewhere else in the morning.
And that just confuses them. No, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Yeah, but it's listen, these changes are difficult to make. So I don't want to also downplay like, setting up the environment. It could take a week or so. It could take planning. Like it's something that, you sometimes need to work through.
Okay.
But that's the environment, just kind of setting up like an optimal sleeping place for them. That's the first step.
So that's the environment. Then once they start showing a social smile, around that time, then we really want to start thinking about the routine.
The routine, yeah. I love the routine.
What does that mean?
That's I think it's my favorite ingredient.
Yeah, me too. When they're little.
Yeah, when they're it's true.
So the 2 to 5 year olds who we work with, the routine. I mean, it's always just parents like running after their kids and chasing after them,
definitely.
and sometimes
You
it's
try
like
to-
2-3 hours long, and I know that's not their favorite time.
No.
The key to the routine is that it really cues for sleep. And that's really what it comes down to. And that's why it's such an important ingredient. I hear about it with my patients all the time. And I remember it with my own kids. Like I remember my son, who he's now about to be 15, but like I could remember him getting into the bath and letting out such a yawn because that bath was so closely paired and so closely associated with bedtime for him. That like that's really an example of like the bedtime cueing sleep, and it was like such a like satisfying yawn. Like you knew he was ready
for mom too.
Yeah,
totally.
But you brought up such a good point. Also, the bathing. You want and just in general, you want to use starting at let's say eight weeks or whatever they're starting to smile. You want to start using the rooms of your home appropriately.
Yeah.
So, for example, you don't bathe in the kitchen. Maybe you started when they were a newborn, bathing them in the sink or on the kitchen island. You want to then switch that to the bathroom at that point. Kind of long term, where will they be bathing? Feeding, you want to feed them in, a kitchen area or a living room environment, not the bathroom, for example, where like as a newborn, the day is like, if you ask, when you just come home from the hospital or for the first few months, like it's all the same, right? Whether it's 4 a.m. or 4 p.m. or, you're feeding in the bathroom, you're bathing in the kitchen, it's chaos, which is normal. But then you want to start using the rooms appropriately starting at 8 weeks. So the bathing is important, right? You want to bathe before bed. Whereas maybe before you would bathe in the morning or in the afternoon, it's important that it's starting to be in the bathroom before bedtime.
So let's start from the beginning.
Yes.
Like what is the routine from A to Z? Like what was Rafa's routine, for example?
So I will never say like this is the routine you need to have.
Okay.
I give suggestions.
Okay.
So often what I like to do with clients is ask them what their routine is.
Okay.
And maybe make some tweaks or modify, but kind of keep what works well for the family.
Okay.
Some people come in and they're like, we have no routine.
Right.
Tell me what to do.
Yes.
So I can give a suggested one or I can say what we do. I mean, it's obviously different now. Raf is my third.
Right.
So with my first, it was like so calm.
Yes.
Totally.
Yes.
So
And now
by
it's
the
a
book.
little bit chaotic, but you know, you want to start in like a play area.
Okay.
So let's say living room environment. I like to start the bedtime feed, so the last feed of the day there, just to give him an opportunity to drink as much as possible. And then we say goodnight to his toys and his siblings, although they sometimes follow us, even though I tell them not to. And we go to the bathroom.
Okay.
We don't always bathe him. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't, but we do something.
But
So,
you go to the bathroom. That's what's important.
yeah, we go
Okay.
to the bathroom. We'll, clean his neck if we're not bathing him. We call it the bathroom pit stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for I'll undress him in the bathroom,
Okay,
though,
okay.
even if I'm not bathing him. This is actually totally my husband's job. I am talking about it as if it's mine, but he's done it every. If I don't
Nice
say
of
that,
you to give credit.
he's done it every single day
Oh.
since we've started.
That's nice.
And so he'll undress him, put him in a towel, bring him directly to his room. So this like idea of, and it sounds simple, but it's important, like play area, bathroom, bedroom,
Yeah.
and not many other stops along the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And not going backwards. So if you could sort of like have like a bubble to what Jamie's saying, because it's really important. It's play, transition in the bathroom, bedroom. Right. And that's really sort of like that harmony of it is what cues sleep. Because if it's play, bathroom, play, then it sort of sends a message to the baby, like when sleep comes. Like it's sort of confusing. This is like the most simple.
Yeah, it's not so easy to do. So, for example, things where we went wrong are, we feed Rafa with a bottle. So we would start the bottle in the living room and then forget it. And the living room is downstairs.
Right.
So there's been many times where, we're either running back downstairs with Rafa in our arms or he's screaming down, but I forgot it takes practice for everyone.
And that's fine too.
Yeah.
That's fine. But I think the idea is really not to like then go and play afterwards. They're not robotic. Like, parents aren't robotic and babies aren't robotic. So I think like allowing for that flexibility is also
for sure. Yeah, I mean,
important.
during this time, I'll have kids. My other kids will be running in and out of the bathroom, screaming. Sometimes with us doing the routine, sometimes not. We try to be as consistent as possible, but again, like you have to be flexible as long as those general areas. Then we get to the bedroom, so we enter the room, dim the lights, turn on the sound. So we don't leave the sound machine on in his room all day. We'll turn it on as we enter. And change.
I like that idea. I mean, parents do it both ways, but I like the idea of it sort of like marking sleep because to hear like the no sound machine to sound machine, I feel like that act of like turning it on is also like an added cue.
Yeah. And then as they get older and they really understand it, it's something that they'll see as well. So it's not like it's just, we turn it on because sleep is coming.
Okay.
And then pajama. Diaper change, cream, pajama, and I put the sleep sack on before the final feed. Some people do it the other way. I really like Rafa to be in his sleep sack, smell it, feel it, know that sleep is coming, and then feed him the rest of that bottle that we started in the living room.
For my little one, for my youngest, he always went to bed a little bit too late because of his two older brothers. So I remember for him, I would have to put the sleep sack on midway through the feed because I would need to wake him a little bit. Yeah. I would need to like wake him a little bit. So I had to sort of like hold off on putting the sleep sack on because I knew
that's
that like
what a lot of people do. That's why they do it at the end, is to kind of wake them. The thing is, the goal is that they don't close their eyes at all during the routine. That's active ingredient D though.
Okay,
that's
later
independent sleep.
on.
So it depends. You can the goal is to practice from day one, from 8 weeks when you're starting this routine.
Yeah.
But give yourself like a lot of leeway. So when we started with Rafa, he was still falling asleep. I mean, I think I have videos of me doing it and he's like dozing off. And it is, I try, but it's not perfect. what the goal is that you practice. And what's really important
And
is
the
that
expectation that you put on yourself is important.
And even if it doesn't work and they fall asleep, the practice will help for when you're, down the line when you're teaching independent sleep, because it's not going to be this like new thing that no one's ever practiced before.
Yeah. So I just want to say one thing. Yeah. I remember when Maddie was born, my second, and I think I was speaking to Jamie, and I was, because it's not like you forget completely, but like you said, each child is different. Totally. So I needed to restart the whole thing all over again with Maddie. Yeah. And I never implemented a newborn routine with Maya because I don't know, I just didn't. I wasn't ready to, because I thought sleep training was 6 months and you only did it at 6 months. Anyway, so I only called Jamie, and it doesn't matter. But the point is that when Maddie was newborn, I called Jamie and you told me everything that you're telling me now. And I remember one thing that you told me. You said, when you put her down, in the bassinet or in the crib, and you leave the room or whatever it is, and she starts to cry, I'm like, what do I do? And you said, it's a routine. It takes time. Pick her up and do what you would have normally done before. Like you don't have to get it perfect the first time.
Plant the seed.
No, yeah.
Exactly. And that was so helpful to me because I didn't feel like I failed straight off the bat,
But that's why we have different ingredients. You weren't doing active ingredient D.
Right.
That only comes after 4 months at the earliest.
And once the 3 others are
you were
checked
just doing A and B. So, put them in their crib with their eyes open, leave the room. And if they cry, of course, you go back and you do whatever you want. Then that's when the survival mode really comes, right? Correct. You just, survive the night.
But that was so important for me to know because, again, I didn't know about the 4 active ingredients of sleep. I didn't know that it was
they're not
in steps. I didn't know it was in steps.
Right.
I thought it was a one side, like a one shot.
It's what Jamie has teased out, what we have boiled down, like all sleep to be part of. It's not like sort of this like holy grail that's
it's our theory.
There. It's our theory.
Well, it works.
Exactly.
I can tell you that it
does
works.
work.
Yeah.
It does.
But I think what it does is it relieves the pressure, right? Because for example, I know people who only do A and B and never do C and D ever, right? They just want to have a good foundation.
And that works.
And, they want to rock their child to sleep, and, it works for them, and that's it. And that's okay too. And that's why I like it, because it's not like you need to do sleep training.
Yeah.
And the truth is, early on you can't.
Right.
So it's really just the environment and the routine. I also, while I'm feeding Rafa at the end, sing him a lullaby. And what I love about this is we were just traveling and I sang him the lullaby, and then we were in like a totally different location and room, and he's like, I know the drill. Like, I know what's happening.
He knew. Exactly.
And it's a comfort to him too, right? So the routine really goes a long way.
Your kids must
really
be like pro at sleep.
I mean, it's funny. We never, like when people say like, did you sleep train? Like the answer is really no.
Me neither.
I really didn't. Trained. I just did these things. I worked on the foundation early on.
Yeah.
I think we just value sleep like as a family.
For sure.
And so like it's just a priority to us in terms of like how we organize our life.
Yeah.
And I don't like to put my kids down when they're fast asleep, because I feel like it's not fair to them to then like wake up a sleep cycle later and not know where they are. So like I value independent sleep more than like, I don't look at it as sleep training. I look at it as like being respectful to them, putting them down, knowing where they are when they fall asleep.
I think also though, like, so we each have 3 kids, and I think that like, I mean, I certainly can't speak for your kids, but I know each of mine comes with like their own like unique sleep challenges throughout their lifespan. So like, my youngest was always an early riser. Like he was like needed to be fed at this age. Or even like in that first year, he needed to be fed. 5 o'clock was like a stretch for him. And that was just where he was at. It wasn't because he was a good sleeper or a bad sleeper, because I did anything right or wrong. My middle son had enlarged adenoids and tonsils, right? And he needed to have them removed. So he always came with the challenges that we see like in, in that profile of kids. You know, like I have teenagers now. That comes with like a host of other sleep challenges. So I don't think it's a matter of like perfect or not perfect sleep. I think like we're all human and like everybody has like their own sleep challenges.
Yeah, and so what you do is you say, okay, here's my child. These are their needs. This is what they're like. This is our family. There's our needs, our values.
Yeah.
And then here are these active ingredients that we know gets your child closer to, falling asleep and staying asleep on their own. And see within those active ingredients, how much can you meet them, right? So maybe you can make the room dark, and you can offer a sleep sack, but you can't get your home's temperature cool enough, for example. You do your best, right? You try to meet each of them as much as you can. We haven't been talking about active ingredient C, which is schedule, but that's a really big one, right? So your baby at 4 to 6 months, their circadian rhythms will be developed. And you mentioned early wake times. That's how I thought about it. But like a baby needs to be up for the day between 6 and 7 a.m. That is very early for parents who have not been sleeping all night. All night. So, when we say to them, your baby has to be up between 6 and 7.
Yeah.
But I've been up 5 times, like 10 a.m. is when we normally
and they're
get
so
up.
happy to bring their baby into bed with them at 6 a.m. and then they sleep until 8 or 9.
Yeah, so that's a big, but then once your baby starts sleeping through the night, 6 a.m. is like perfect, right?
Exactly.
Anyway, so you try to, meet each of those active ingredients in the way that you can, but being like, patient with yourself.
Yeah.
Where you guys were at with 0 to 4 months, I would say that the only ingredients that are really relevant were the environment and routine. So that's what you can start working on. And it could go a long way.
Yeah.
Right. So even though sleep training or active ingredient D is like what everyone focuses on, you may not even need to tackle that if you work on the first one.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Really. And that's why when my kids we never really had to do any sleep training.
Agreed.
I don't think a lot of people know that. And I thank you very, very much for sharing all that with us today. So thank you so much, guys. And I hope to see you guys soon when we actually talk about sleep training or active ingredient D.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jamie and Pamela.
Well, thanks for having us.
Thank you.